Hi, and good afternoon to everybody, and good morning to our colleagues joining us from Europe. Thank you so much for taking the time. I am Jenny Len Mako, but I'm actually only one half of EURAXESS here in ASEAN. This is my colleague, Dr. Susan Rezovaso, who will also be facilitating the discussion today. And today we want to create a network, a new network for brain circulation. And I was looking at, how we could since we were coming from lunch about an analogy on how to think about this. And I like the analogy of like having different versions of curry. There are versions of curry everywhere. So I think the interpretations of how a curry should be depending on where you are and what the intention is of having the curry, uh, how spicy the curry is, and it exists, to for every taste buds. It's really I think it's that, it's also a reflection of history and culture, of hopes and aspirations. And that is the reason why we are here today. So the question really is what curry or what ATM is suited for you? What ingredients do you want to bring in, or do you want to leave out? And you will also hear about the evolution of the ATM, or so as we know about the evolution of curry as well. So I hope that it will inspire you to ideate, to reflect, and to have also encounters amongst ourselves as well as we go forward. So at the end of today's session, we hope that there will be a joint understanding of the genesis of the current EU talent mobility landscape and best practices. Also, an awareness on the part of the ATM experts group of possible obstacles in regional talent circulation, and also a common basis for the discussion of the future of the EU ASEAN talent mobility activities. And with this, I am very pleased to introduce to you our first speaker, all the way from Brussels. He is a policy officer for research and innovation, actors and research careers, DG Research and Innovation of European Commission, who knows so much about the evolution of EURAXESS and how it is today the ERA Talent Platform. Thank you so much for joining us, and the room is yours, Mr. Slaven Biziljan Sivic. Take it away, Slaven. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and good afternoon, everyone. I can just repeat what Victor mentioned. It would have been much better to be with you there in Bangkok. I think I already live in Brussels for quite some time, and I haven't seen such a rainy period for very long. But perhaps another time we can all travel there, and it would be great to meet you in person. So, as Jenny introduced, I'm involved in one of these curries called EURAXESS. It is out there for quite some time. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. This has been our approach in Europe for this, but I hope it will give you a little bit of inspiration on how we tackled some issues in the past, how it became what it is today, why it became what it is today, and hopefully it will also trigger some internal discussions. But I think what is clear is that the need for initiatives as EURAXESS that tackle barriers to mobility, that facilitate international cooperation, are more needed than ever. I will share my screen just to verify with the timekeepers. Do I have 1 hour time or half an hour?
As you wish. Just kidding.
As
No,
I wish.
half an
Okay,
hour,
good.
perhaps. Slaven, if you could maybe give a presentation for half an hour, and then we would love it if you should stay for questions from the floor. Is that okay?
Okay, good. Perfect.
Thank you.
And I hope my screen is well visible to everybody.
Not yet,
Yes.
but we're hoping it comes out soon.
Yeah, it has to travel far, I guess.
Yes. Oh, there you go. Well, we see it on our screen here in front, but I perfect. There you go. There you go.
Works
But
great.
perhaps Slaven, you can move your Zoom box so that we don't
Yes,
see
of
the
course.
black screen. Yeah, that one. You can move it maybe or hide it. Awesome. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Even higher. Great. We are set to go. Perfect. So let's do it as such. I'll give around a half an hour, 30 minutes, let's say, presentation. I will try not to rush through things because there's a lot to say about this. There's a lot of, I mean, most of the initiatives exist between 10 and for more than 10 years, some of them almost 20 years. And as you can imagine, a lot of things have happened over the 20 years. So I will try to give you a brief overview about EURAXESS, how we came to EURAXESS, how EURAXESS is today, what works well, what could be done differently, and also how we look at EURAXESS in future. First, we start with the why. I think it's always important to start with the why. Basically, why was EURAXESS developed in the first place? What are the issues it is trying to solve, and then we will look at how EURAXESS actually works. Just for your information, EURAXESS is really the core of what we call ERA Talents platform. ERA Talent platform is an initiative that is grouping together several existing initiatives and we'll add several new ones. So on one hand, it is a kind of a packaging almost exercise, but this mostly aims to uh, improve or make it easier for the end users to use different initiatives that the Commission, together with the member states, has developed. So today we will talk about the why, we will talk about what is EURAXESS, and then I will talk about what is the future of EURAXESS as part of ERA Talent platform. And after that, we should still have around half an hour time for Q&A. So let's start with the basics. And also in the previous introduction has already been mentioned that we need a joint approach is very important. There are joint challenges that need to be tackled through joint actions. And if we actually look at the EU, what we actually see over the last decades, and this is a continuously improving situation, is that there is still a slightly fragmented RNI landscape. So each country, each member state has its own policies when it comes to research and innovation, which are of course complementary and strongly aligned with the EU RNI policy, but there is, I would say, still not a one single market for research and innovation in Europe. And this has been really a priority for European Commission now for, I would say, 2 decades, especially since the launch of the first European research area communication in 2003, and which basically really creates, which really aims at creating, like I said, a single market for research and innovation in Europe. And the need for this is quite clear because if you look at, for example, the development of new technologies, they are becoming increasingly complex. In order to develop new technologies, you require an increasing amount of financial resources, which might not be present within a single country. So you have the element of financial resources, but it goes beyond that. Even if you want to develop new technologies, we're also seeing an increasingly multidisciplinary approach in RNI, which also often means that you don't always have all the competences in the same country, meaning that for the purpose of financial and human resources, it is important to collaborate, it is important to pool resources, it is important to facilitate exchange of people from one country to another, so you can really create these multidisciplinary teams working on complex issues, which for the EU meant that we need to further defragment the RNI landscape. And like I said, this has been one of the big priorities and achievements over the last decades and is, of course, a work in progress. What is actually also quite important from the EU side is that okay, we have to step up our efforts when it comes to international cooperation. We have to be open to each other, but also we also have to increase the investments in RNI. That's why in the Pact for Research and Innovation, and together with your policy agenda, there has been agreed on a target of 3% of the EU GDP to be invested in R&D, and the countries which are lagging behind within the EU, they should increase their total expenditure on R&D in the next 5 years by 50%. So it's also a matter of um, investing higher amounts in R&D in general. So what is actually clear that if we want to tackle these global challenges, these joint challenges, we have to work together. And when we work together, there will be an exchange of knowledge and basically exchange of people. And what we have actually seen is that national mobility is also one of the parameters of excellence. We have seen that um, more researchers that are more mobile tend to be also more successful, and vice versa. Now, when we talk about mobility, and while in the past we focused primarily on cross-border mobility, today we are looking at all different types of mobility. We're not only looking at cross-border mobility, we're also looking at sometimes within the same country at inter-regional mobility between developed and less developed regions in the same country. But we're also looking at virtual and physical mobility, also looking at intersectoral and interdisciplinary mobility. So I would say how we look today at the topic of mobility, it goes beyond the pure cross-border mobility. And how we actually see is that what we actually see also within Europe is that the mobility among researchers is increasing. And there's been a survey conducted 2 years ago which showed that around 63% of researchers collaborate with researchers in their own country, a little bit more collaborate with researchers in EU countries, around a half collaborates with researchers in non-EU countries. And we also seen that, for example, early career researchers, which we often refer to as R1, um, uh, they are also quite mobile. Around 60% of them has been mobile. Or I'm sorry, around 23% of them has been mobile for more than 3 months. Of course, if you look at Europe, and I think also in ASEAN, you have a similar approach. A lot of policies are still national policies. Think of labor laws, social security, taxes, which means that when somebody moves from one country to another, there's going to be a different treatment when it comes to tax and labor law. And besides that, there are also other barriers as well. So first, what we have seen is that there is an issue when it comes to access to information. Researchers are usually aware of, for example, job opportunities or funding opportunities in their country. They are much less familiar with job opportunities or funding opportunities in other countries. In some cases, a language might be the issue, but often it is simply not being aware of national specificities when it comes to this. And it's also what we wanted to tackle with EURAXESS. Now, while in EU there shouldn't be any issues with visa and immigration procedures. If you look at international mobility, if you look at EURAXESS, we have also EURAXESS worldwide. This is much more than just about European Union. This is about the current 43 countries participating in ReSaver, and we have 9 worldwide hubs around the world. So it is really about global mobility. And this is where we see some issues are also appearing, such as visa and immigration procedures, which tend to be complex and long. Recognition of qualifications can be quite difficult in some cases, especially if a qualification has been obtained in a non-EU country or a country that has no agreement with the EU when it comes to recognition. But it's also quite difficult to organize networking and collaboration opportunities. We all know that this is crucial for fostering a competitive research environment. You also have to acknowledge that researchers and innovators, in some cases, they usually don't travel alone. Often they have their families, they have their spouses, they have their children, and of course, this also brings a level of complexity to mobility, especially cross border. Like I mentioned, the social security and taxation, the variety of social security and taxation policies between the countries makes it challenging for each individual to understand it. Every time they have to almost learn a new set, or let's say get familiar with a total new legal framework and navigating it. And finally, also the language barriers. And most of these issues are actually issues we also try to tackle with EURAXESS. So if you look at EURAXESS, what is EURAXESS? Well, usually when we ask somebody what do they know about EURAXESS, they will say this is a portal with jobs, right? Nevertheless, EURAXESS is much more. EURAXESS has both a physical component and a digital component, and these two work really hand in hand. If you look at the digital component, this is where we work with a set of portals, right? So we have a European portal with jobs funding and hosting database. We also have 43 national portals, and I will get to that in no time. We also have on digital side, also 9 worldwide portals. You can, for example, go on EURAXESS ASEAN Hub portal. So this is on the digital side of things. And this is mostly when it comes to providing information, looking for jobs, everything that is that can be put on a portal. Of course, not everything can be solved through portals. You might have a lot of specific situations, and for that, there's also the physical component of EURAXESS. And the physical component of EURAXESS exists of a network of more than, on the slide you see 600, in reality it's more than 650 associated service centers. So basically you can really go on EURAXESS website and you can see a map with 600, more than 650 service centers. And they are really to support researchers with all kinds of issues. It can be with visa recognition, it can be it can be with diploma recognition, with visa requirements. There are also dual career programs for spouses, how to integrate in the new environment, etc., etc. And what both this digital component to these platforms and this physical component, this network of 650 plus service centers try to do is that they try basically to support EURAXESS, to support researchers and innovators, and in some cases also perform organizations throughout their career. And I'll give an example where it actually starts. And I would say often when do researchers come for the first time in contact with EURAXESS is when they are looking for jobs in another country, because EURAXESS has a pretty large database of jobs. So when they're looking for jobs in another country, they become familiar on EURAXESS. So this is, I would say, the first task or the first support EURAXESS provides to researchers is it makes it easier to find jobs in another country. While finding a job in a country is a crucial first step, there is much more that needs to be done after that. So when somebody finds a job in another country, they, in most cases, or with the exception of virtual mobility, but in many cases, they will have to move to that country. And this is actually where you have a lot of services being offered. Think of integration, languages, recognition of the diploma, as I mentioned, the dual careers for spouses. And so this is the second step where EURAXESS comes in. So somebody finds a job in another country. This is the first step. EURAXESS comes in. Second step is they move to that country. EURAXESS can help them with the mobility, but also with integration. Of course, researchers finding a job in a new country, moving to that country, there's still a large chance that they won't stay in the same at the same organization, in the same position for until the rest of their life. So research has been quite ambitious as well. There is also the need for career development after this first employment in a new country. And this is the third and the final, I would say, point of interaction where researchers have contact with EURAXESS. It is by contacting one of those 650 service centers that are providing career development guidance to researchers, and as such, these service centers can guide researchers towards their future opportunities. So this is in a nutshell what EURAXESS is about. When it was launched around 19 years ago, formerly known as ERA-More. Next year in May we will celebrate EURAXESS 20-year anniversary. Where it is active, already mentioned. In Europe we have 43 European countries part of EURAXESS. We also have EURAXESS in the rest of the world through 9 hubs. I'm sure you're familiar with the ASEAN hub, as you have Suzanne and Jenny there with you. And why I think this also became quite apparent is about removing barriers. It's about creating conditions for open, transparent, and merit-based recruitment. It's about promoting cooperation between researchers, between research professional organizations, and we also hope indirectly to improve the attractiveness of research careers across Europe and beyond. Now, if you look at EURAXESS, and I already mentioned that it has both a digital side and a physical side that are, I would say, two sides of the same coin. We have the EURAXESS portal, we have the 43 national portals, and then when it comes to the physical side, we have the EURAXESS service networks. And EURAXESS Worldwide is a combination of portals and network. You might wonder, why do we have so many different portals? Why do you have a European portal and then the national portals? This is for a very simple reason, is that a lot of information that researchers need is country specific. And there are also country specific challenges which might not, for example, be present in other countries. You also have the challenge of making sure that the information you share with researchers is always up to date. Legislative framework is changing all the time. So that's why we have decided that while we try to put as much information on the European portal, we only put information on European portal that we know can support basically everybody. All country-specific information, for example, about taxation or about social security issues in a certain country or social security policies of that country, we don't put that on the EU portal, we put that on the national portal. Like this, we also manage to keep things quite tidy, because if we would migrate all the information from the national portals into the EU portal, then the EU portal would become probably too complex, too big for users to navigate. That's why when somebody, for example, looks for a job, they go to the EU portal, but imagine they want to know more information about how to, for example, about several things in France, then they will go on the French national portal, and there they will find all specific information about France. This information is usually up to date, and the people behind these national portals are usually also representatives of national ministries of research, innovation, education, or an organization that has been appointed by this ministry. Maybe just dive into a little bit of the numbers. So if you look at the central EURAXESS portal, I also refer to it as the EU portal. So it's quite significant when it comes to size. We have, and these are a little bit outdated numbers, but now we have more than 20,000 registered organizations organizations being higher education institutions and research performing organizations. Now you have a little bit more than 80,000 researchers using the platform and a little bit more than 80,000 job offers that are published yearly. If you look at the visitors, we have visitors from more than 200 countries. The bulk of them come from Europe, but we see the runner-up destination is Asia. So we already see that there are quite some researchers from Asia visiting EURAXESS for a variety of reasons. And when it comes to the number of page views, unique page views is around 2 million. The trend has also increased. The growing trends of the last years has also been continued. Last year and in 2020, it was a little bit more than 2 million unique viewers per month. Then we have the 43 national EURAXESS portal. So like I mentioned, you go, for example, on euraxess.europa.eu. If you want specific information, then you go to the national portals, and here you have a list of the countries that are participating in EURAXESS. These are all either either EU member states or countries that have an association agreement with Horizon Europe, or in the past with Horizon 2020 or FP7. And like I said, a lot of animation happens within the national borders, where we have hundreds of individuals working for these national either portals, but also I would say the service centers that assist researchers. And the set of this, if you would take all of these service centers together, they handle a huge amount of requests per year, more than 450,000 requests, which is a significant number. And then we go at EURAXESS Worldwide. So there are currently 9 EURAXESS Worldwide hubs, basically offices across the world. We also have one in ASEAN. Like I said, Jenny and Suzanne are there with you. They organize a lot of events, gather a lot of participants together, and they're also managing a pretty large community of researchers worldwide. And I'm sure throughout today, Jenny and Suzanne will talk more about their work, but it is really about facilitating collaboration, global collaboration on joint challenges. So let's maybe move. So this kind of illustrated what EURAXESS is doing today. Let's now go towards the future. And if you talk about the future of EURAXESS, then the term ERA Talent Platform gets used a lot. Now we have to make a little bit of a distinction between policy discussions and how we will visualize things. So EURAXESS as such will continue to be EURAXESS in the future. But from the policy making side, we are often talking about ERA Talent Platform because we see EURAXESS fitting well next to other existing and future initiatives. And to make sure that these initiatives are interoperable, are aligned, that all these different initiatives are aiming at the same user often, that it also makes it much more easier for the users to use these different product services, whatever has been developed. So that's why it's very important to understand that in the policy context, we talk about ERA Talent Platform, but of next year's, when the work is completed, we get to say, I would say, the next generation of all these initiatives, you will still see EURAXESS. You will just see it being kind of different. And this has been quite an important focus of the European Commission over the last, I would say, years, especially from the policy perspective. It has been mentioned in a variety of policy documents in which the stakeholders or, for example, the Council of European Union has recommended the Commission to release engage in developing this talent platform consisting of different modules. So if we look at how it will look like, as I mentioned, it will cover both existing and new initiatives. The existing initiatives, the biggest one by far is EURAXESS. We also have an HRS for R, which is oversimplified. It is an HR award granted to higher education institutions and research performing organizations that have made significant progress on a set of criteria such as open and merit-based recruitment. We also have ReSaver, which is a pan-European occupational pension fund for researchers, and currently in collaboration with OECD, we are developing a careers observatory, which will give us insights about the supply and demand for researchers, the supply and demand for skills, the gaps, but also insight in working and employment conditions. The idea of the Research Careers Observatory is to support evidence-based policymaking in the future. Now, what we actually want to do with your talent platform, I already mentioned this, we want to kind of bring these different initiatives while keeping them separate. We also want to kind of have better interoperability and synergies between them. Ideally, this will result in higher value for the user, because currently we see that they have to navigate in these different almost isolated environments, both virtual environments or even kind of physical environments. And so what we actually want to do is to create synergies between these initiatives, making it easier for the user to use all these services. But also from the back office, it will allow us to better align IT development. And the idea behind all of this, of course, this would also, like one of my first slides is, I mentioned that we have to defragment the R&I landscape. We have to pull together resources and competence. Same we actually want to do with these initiatives. This will allow us to pool the resources and the competence, and to make the whole set of initiatives much more useful for the end users. How we actually, if you then zoom into the EURAXESS, because I think this is the focus of today's discussion. If you zoom into the EURAXESS, what we're actually looking there as points of improvement, and these are the things that will always be extremely important. It will never be, I would say, completed. It will continuously be improved over time, and it's also what I call the 6 focus areas of EURAXESS. So first we have the user experience. What we want to do there is to offer a more personalized experience. We want to use mass customization. We also want to have a more harmonized experience between the EU and the national portals, and among the national portals, but also between the services. So there is a clear standard of quality when somebody uses different EURAXESS services, for example, in totally different countries. We also want to simplify the services and how they're being offered, making it easier for the users to use these services. Everything that EURAXESS does is free of charge, but we would avoid having services that require the user to spend significant amount of time and energy in order to locate them. For example, if they have a question about visas in a certain country, it shouldn't take them high amount of clicks and checking unrelevant pages before they get, for example, to the right person in that country they have to contact for this. So we really want to kind of look at the user journey and make it as smooth as possible. We also want to integrate EURAXESS with other modules. Now this is then more from the perspective of research performing organizations. We want to organize EURAXESS with the HR modules that they are using. The second focus area is about better matchmaking. So this can be really interpreted in various ways. You can have matchmaking. I mean, looking for a job is basically a matchmaking between individual looking for a job and an organization looking for hiring somebody, but we also want to facilitate matchmaking among researchers, among employers, also matchmaking in not pure research related fields, I would say. So you're sort of looking at how can we better matchmake researchers that have entrepreneurial ambitions with each other, perhaps with companies or universities that want to engage in some kind of spin-offs or startups. So we're also looking into that into the future, how to improve this. And of course, we also for this will rely on new technological developments that make it easier to connect different parties. Then the stronger relationships. Well, this is more related to marketing and promotion of EURAXESS. We have a quite large um, group of permanent users of EURAXESS, and we are very happy about it. Of course, we want to provide more information, more tools, more services on EURAXESS, and for that, we also hope that this will eventually um, result in a higher engagement of non-users of EURAXESS. So that's why it's important to build relationships, stronger relationships using EURAXESS. Fourth, we want to have this what we call ecosystem approach. The needs of researchers and research performing organizations are probably more extensive than what is possible for a single network or entity to support them with. That's why maybe also a suggestion for today's discussion is that it's important to focus on the gaps, focus on what with your initiative you can solve. It's very difficult to solve everything, but for the issues that, for example, in this case, the network is not able to solve, issues that the service centers cannot provide answers to, it is important to have, or it's important to be aware that in case of EURAXESS, it is a part of a bigger ecosystem, and that the EURAXESS players are familiar with non-EURAXESS ecosystem players. So when somebody, for example, has a question that cannot be answered by the service center is able to refer this individual, this researcher, to another third party, which is able to further support them. So we also definitely see this ecosystem approach growing in importance in future, and EURAXESS service centers, for example, and the portals doing the things that they are good at. Data privacy is, of course, also as crucial. We don't see privacy as a necessity, but we see really privacy as a way to make the user experience much better. For example, for the privacy, we will be developing different privacy settings so your users can have a very high control over which information is being shared with who. And then we, of course, have the governance. The government always has to follow. You cannot have a fixed governance and then try to have groundbreaking changes in your initiatives. So you also need to have a governance which is flexible and can evolve over time depending on what the needs are and what is the position of the initiative in the entire landscape. So also when it comes to the governance, EURAXESS has a strong coordination role from the Commission side, but a lot of work is being done on the level of each country participating, or on the level of each worldwide hub. And that's why a governance structure needs to be in place that allows further modifications of the governance structure in the future. I think hopefully also this is something that that will be also inspiration how we have approached this, but it's a very important element. Then regarding the planning, at this stage when it comes to modernizing EURAXESS or bringing really EURAXESS to the next level, we are in a situation where we are conducting a lot of focus groups, surveys, we have a lot of discussions with the end users, with the stakeholders, etc., etc. So, of course, we have a lot of ideas ourselves. We really, in this case, started from the users, so we really want to hear from the users what works well, what could be improved, what other types of services could be included in your access, how should your access work, how should it look like, how should it feel like. And we are now at what we call the first stage of this big initiative of modernizing your access, which is about evaluation, market research, focus groups with your access network. Then after this, based on everything that we have learned from this evaluation, surveys, focus groups, etc., we will prototype and test the new portal, and hopefully by the end of this year, probably early next year, we will launch the new EURAXESS portal as part of this ERA Talent Platform larger initiative. 36 minutes, 6 minutes longer than promised.
I am impressed.
I believe we still have quite some time for Q&A. I will stop sharing my slides.
Thank you so much, Slaven, for that comprehensive look at your access. It was an incredible presentation, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions from the floor. So I open it now. Anyone who would like to ask our speaker a question, please go ahead. Yes, ma'am, from the Philippines.
I'd like to find out if Philippines is a member and how does a country become a member or take part in the program of EURAXESS.
So basically, indirectly, I mean, there are two ways of being involved in EURAXESS, right? I mentioned we have these 43 countries. So how these countries work is that they are part of Horizon Europe. They're either member states or a country associated to Horizon Europe. In case of Philippines, Philippines is not associated to Horizon Europe, and for that reason, we have actually established this network of EURAXESS worldwide. And it is really our ambassadors, Suzanne and Jenny, who are there really to connect countries participating in EURAXESS and countries not participating in EURAXESS. So I think if Philippines, and probably you're already in close contact with Jenny, you can really benefit from EURAXESS. For example, you can have your organizations from each non-participating country can register on EURAXESS. So you can, for example, post jobs from your country on EURAXESS. You can also inform your researchers about opportunities offered by EURAXESS. So you can really, even if a country is not a member formally of EURAXESS because it requires association to Horizon Europe, they can still benefit from the most, if not all, EURAXESS services. But for more details, it's best to talk to Jenny.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Slaven. Any more questions from the floor, please? Perhaps while you're still absorbing, I can ask perhaps Slaven, maybe you can talk about expound more about how this ERA Talent platform also connects to Europass and EURES. I mean, there was talk earlier on about talent mobility and how it also influences human resources, and also even the mobility of labor to certain aspects. So, like when it comes to expanding this discussion, how do you see this? How does it work? Europass and EURES.
So, if you look at EURAXESS is a pretty big initiative, right? But what we have observed within Europe, and also this has been the case outside Europe, is that you have a lot of often small initiatives operating in isolation. And to a certain extent, especially when EURAXESS was very small, it also kind of operated in isolation. It was European Commission, DG Research and Innovation, with the ministries, national ministries of education, research, and science, innovation. And from the moment you grow, you actually also realize that this makes it kind of this fragmented approach makes it quite difficult. So for the end users, because they know that there are so many different initiatives, and sometimes it's on national level, sometimes on the EU level. So what we're actually trying to do is really creating interoperability with other major successful initiatives. And Jenny already mentioned two. One is EURES, and another one is EUROPASS. Now, the EURES is also an initiative which has also been recently modernized. It has a relatively simple goal, I would say, but it is very well developed. So what EUROPASS tries to do is try to standardize how CVs look like. Right. I think if you are a recruiter, you have a job, you posted a vacancy, you receive 30 different CVs, 30 different templates, and it can be quite challenging to compare one to another. So what Europass tries to do is to kind of standardize how CVs can look like, and like that, it can make it very easy for recruiters to select the best candidate, but also it creates kind of transparency and equal treatment among the candidates. Now, Europass has evolved from simply that standardization. Now, if you register on Europass, you have a whole set of tools where you can manage a library of your CVs. It's very easy to modify them, to modernize them, to change it according to the job you're applying to. They have a whole application builder there. And so while we see a lot of researchers are using this, and we really recommend that, it is as it is today. There's still no interoperability with EURAXESS. What happens? A researcher joins EURAXESS. Then we tell them, okay, you should upload your CV on EURAXESS. But in order to create your CV, please go on Europass. And then they go to Europass, they create their CV, they extract their CV, and they then upload it on EURAXESS, which is kind of a lengthy and cumbersome procedure. And so what we are now doing is to making interoperability between EURAXESS and Europass. So from the moment you log in EURAXESS and you have a Europass account, you can already, for example, in EURAXESS see all the CVs that you are having. You can use application builder. You can use all the tools that are existing for Europass already in EURAXESS, right? So this is, I think, a very good example of interoperability between two major initiatives which will facilitate the user experience. Second, interoperability is what you mentioned with EURES. So EURES is basically a network among the national employment agencies. These employment agencies have access to huge databases of jobs, of vacancies within their country. This is not research specific. This is really for all kinds of jobs. And what EURES does, in Europe, it pulls vacancies from all the national job agencies into one job platform, which has hundreds of thousands of jobs, right? And what we actually want to do is to create also interoperability with them, with EURES, because while EURAXESS, it's a very specific environment for RNI community. It has a set of tools which are very specific to the needs for researchers. We also want to make sure that all the jobs that researchers might be interested in are actually on EURAXESS. And for that reason, we also want to integrate all the jobs from EURES that are not already on EURAXESS. Bulk of them is on EURAXESS already, but not all of them. So you want to integrate all the all the jobs from EURES onto EURAXESS on EURAXESS. So researchers are sure that by visiting EURAXESS, they don't miss on any job opportunities that might not be listed there.
Thank you, Slaven. These are really interesting initiatives, and I hope that our participants are taking notes, you can see like the trajectory of having this platform for research jobs, and then having like a standardized uh, template of how to write a CV. And then you have this network of employment agencies where, on a bigger scale, where you have jobs, not only in RNI, you have that platform also, this interoperability that Slavin is discussing. So something for you to think about. And I'll give the room now to Mr. Aldo to ask his question, please.
Thank you very much. Slaven, you have presented in a very clear way the process of the evolution, and you have also spoken about certain challenges that you had to face and how you have dealt with it in order to find a solution. But there are 2 points. The first one, how important was the, let's call it the policy support to what you were doing? The fact of having this framework that was really facilitating your effort. And the second question is, were there any major hiccups in the way? Because you have presented a process which appears very smooth, but I wonder whether there were sometimes some of those days where you have to deal with things that are a little bit hard to solve. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these two very good questions. So the first one is about policy support, of course. So if you want to be successful, you need to work well on different levels, right? Initiatives such as EURAXESS, it cannot only work if it is a sole EU initiative. It cannot only work if it is just an initiative launched by some member states. So you need to really work on different levels, and you need a clear. It has to be clear who is responsible for what. Now, how this has been approached through EURAXESS. So when a new country joins EURAXESS, the Commission was offering them what you call a startup grant. It is a grant to develop the national portals, to put content on it, to find people who will be involved in that at the beginning for the first years. It's a startup grant. And also like this, everybody has the same kind of more or less financing at the beginning. In order also to create coordination, of course, there's a lot of coordination meetings that we are having between the EU and national representatives of EURAXESS to make sure that we focus on the most important things, that our actions are aligned to each other. But also between ourselves, we have what we call a declaration of efforts, declaration of commitment, which stipulates how we work together. So it is important to formalize these type of collaborations. Of course, if you just work with a couple of countries, it might not be an issue. But for example, if you look at now at EURAXESS, we have 43 countries and the worldwide hubs, 650 plus service centers. It is important to have a clear governance structure, have a clear structure for policy support, and have formal and have the rights and responsibilities vested in a sort of kind of formal document. Regarding the second question, which is the major hiccups, to be honest, I think with EURAXESS, of course, having minor hiccups, it's part of daily operations of any large network or initiative. I would say the collaboration has been going very smoothly. I think we are very lucky that what from the EU we are thinking at, and what the member states and what the users need, this has always been kind of aligned. So we didn't have many situations where we had conflicting perspectives on how things should be done, or in which direction things have to evolve. For example, if I look at the focus areas, we talk about improved user experience, stronger relationships, better matchmaking. I mean, these are all the things we all agree on that. And it's pretty hard not to agree on those things. So there is really a I would say it's important to have players around the table, parties around the table that share that ambition to support researchers and research performing organizations in this trajectory of mobility. So this is kind of already, I would say, a very important first step. Then, of course, you have to. I think what is quite important, I would say, I'm really emphasizing the governance structure of this. When you create this, I think, especially if you start small and build it over time, it is important to already have a certain governance structure in place that will make it feasible to scale it up significantly over time. So you need a governance structure which is already foreseen for the scaling up phase. Maybe major hiccups, if just to say one, it could be with the IT side of things. So recently we had a major migration to a new Drupal 9. I won't go into the details, but what is actually clear is that when you have an initiative so big, both at EU and national levels, but also some developments were done on national levels, when you have major IT revamps, changing, when you're migrating data, for example, these are tasks you have to plan really well in advance, because initiatives as this start very simple, but over time they become huge, and from the IT perspective, it can be quite challenging if you want to make structural changes to this. So I think also from the governance side, you have to think of scaling up from the beginning, but also from the IT side, you have to think of scaling up from the beginning, and also you have to acknowledge that the moment you get bigger, your mission might also expand. From the moment you have a large platform, which is of providing solutions for X number of issues, there's a big chance that there will be requests to expand the offering of your platform to all kinds of additional to solve all kinds of additional issues. And I think also there are the challenges you have to manage this change. You have to know to which extent you want your platform to change. You still have to provide value to your core users, and you always have to balance this with the additional things that might be offered on your platform, but might, for example, have a negative impact on the existing user base. So I would say it's also important to have an open perspective, but yet know what are the limits of what your platform wants to do, because otherwise you might end up in having a platform which is doing all kinds of things, but not really successful at solving any of the issues in detail.
Thank you so much, Slaven. You have given us a lot to think about. Everything, of course, will be embraced, and hopefully we can think about it a little bit more and see what we can come up with it. So, may I ask everyone to show the great appreciation to Slaven for waking up very early in the morning to be with us. Thank you so much, Slaven. We'll let you go now because I know that you have a very busy schedule, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.